Welcome to the live session,
Hmm.
first of many.
Hmm.
Today we're going to be talking about empaths. We're going to be talking about meditation a little bit. We're going to be talking about uh, what are some ways that you can enhance your psychic skills, psychic sensory, and your intuition. So let's get into this.
Yeah, and I think from the mental health side, because I do believe that even psychics, sensitives, and spiritual people need mental health support and understanding where the data is coming from. Um, there you go. Okay. Yeah, understanding where the data is coming from, understanding how to navigate life as somebody who's very sensitive or very psychic, um, is really important.
Yeah. So, what kind of questions did we want to start off with?
So I think it's important to really try to figure out the difference between being an empath
Mhm.
and a lot of people in the spiritual community or even in the mental health community will be like, I'm an empath and I'm an empath, but like how often are we using that, saying that you're an empath, to justify maybe things that are stemming from trauma?
Yeah, that's a big one. And I'll say that a lot of people use that as, like you said, a bypass for avoiding their issues and for feeding their ego. All of a sudden everybody is an empath. And I think a lot of that is confusion for emotional detection. That, yeah, you have emotions. Yeah, you have reactions that occur in you when you're around certain people. And that doesn't necessarily mean you're an empath. It also doesn't necessarily mean that you're not.
Mm-hmm.
It means that you pick up on data from people around you.
Mm-hmm.
And we all do that in all kinds of different ways. So, as far as any difference, it would be that uh, one is definitions, and two is how amplified can you get that sensory? Can you amplify that sensory for it to be even greater than it is in your everyday life?
And by amplify the sensory, would you say that that's like discernment, being aware of what you're feeling?
It's going to be a multi pronged uh, effect of amplifying and connecting to your awareness because ultimately the amplification comes from learning how to be aware, first and foremost, and learning to pay more attention, obviously, in the word aware, but to pay attention to how your body or your emotional centers react when you're around different people and
Mm-hmm.
actually noticing what emotions are brought up. And usually it'll start off with the major emotions like maybe like love or hate or anger or jealousy or frustration if you feel anything at all. For most everyday people in everyday situations, you're probably going to come across uh, people that feel just regular. You don't really get one sense strongly or another from them. And so that's where the tricks come into play is
Mm-hmm.
to noticing when you have reactions and actually tagging them. Because essentially what you're doing is building a language inside of you for understanding the world around you.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a starting point. Uh, why it's multi pronged is because the effects that you're learning or the ways in which you're going to grow that way. And then you're going to grow in a way that is also through your meditation practices. And then you're going to grow in a way that you know what's happening inside of you as well. What are the reactions occurring in you aside from other people that are around you that you're empathically picking up on?
Mm-hmm.
Learn how to empathically pick up on yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really good start place.
Yeah, like a lot of empaths and gifted psychics and sensitives, they feel everything at once. So they're feeling what they're picking up from other people, and then they're somehow feeling what they're feeling, but they're dismissing their own energy in their body. So a lot of sensitives are disassociated from their body.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the part where it's like crucial to know, am I feeling this because of trauma? Am I disassociating from because of trauma? Or am I disassociating because there's bad energy around me? Because both can be happening at one time or another or at the same time.
Yeah.
And it's tricky.
And you may be disassociating because it's an overwhelming
Mm-hmm.
sensory from both you and the
Exactly.
person.
Exactly.
And a lot of that comes from not knowing how to set proper boundaries with people, and also not knowing how to energetically detach yourself from other people and their emotions.
Mm-hmm.
So not only are you taking on their junk, but you're adding it on top of your own junk,
Yeah.
and completely oblivious that that is happening. You either maybe feel drained and you assume it's them,
Yep.
or you feel drained and think it's you. And again, it could be a combination.
Yeah, and I think so. One of the things that has helped me, because I definitely struggled with that, I know being very psychic and sensitive, and also having trauma
Mm-hmm.
around people, because my mother was very controlling, and she would bulldoze over my boundaries. And so what I learned as a child was people are not safe.
Mm.
So I'm sensitive and I'm picking up on people's emotions, and I have a subconscious fear of people because of the abuse that I experienced as a child. So somatic work, really feeling into my body whenever, so there's always signs, right? Like you're out, you're at work, you're at a party, whatever, and you start to feel that anxiety. Well,
Mm-hmm.
when you can feel into your body and you can pause and say, what am I feeling in my body? And start even doing the, what do I see with, it's like three things you see, three things, one that you see, one that you feel. I
Mm-hmm.
can't remember the last one. And that immediately grounds you into your body. And now you can have a better idea of like, what is mine and what is everybody else's. And you can do energetic boundaries too, right? Like in the moment.
Of course, yeah. The easiest way to do an energetic boundary is to come down into your lower chakra, just
Mm,
below your belly button. So even touching there and bringing your mind's attention there, that will tell your energy to withdraw. So you're no longer exchanging data with everybody around you. You kind of have this blockade up, so to
yeah,
speak.
yeah.
And I did want to go back to, you mentioned somatic work.
Mm-hmm.
So what is somatic work?
So somatic work, so the word somatic is essentially feeling into the body. So somatic experiencing is a modality that teaches your nervous system how to calm down after a peak. So whenever we are in fight or flight or freeze, our nervous system is at its peak, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what tends to happen when we have a lot of abuse is we stay there. And we think this is our normal way of functioning. And we say this is anxiety. Well, yeah, it could manifest in anxiety, but you can't stay in fight or flight all the time. And so when you do somatic experiencing, when you work with your body's natural somatic movements, you feel into the body. When you focus on the negative feelings, eventually your nervous system kind of comes down from that peak. The more you do these exercises, the more that your body and your nervous system does it naturally. It becomes a habit. You're teaching your nervous system how to calm down. When we are born with the ability to have fight or flight, but the parasympathetic, which is the one that calms us down, is not present. We actually learn how to use our parasympathetic through our caregivers.
Mm-hmm.
So if our caregivers did not, show up, if they were not emotionally available, if they did not soothe us when we cried, we never learned how to do that. So we can learn how to do that as adults.
Yeah, so that's absolutely a good skill, and it teaches you both levels, like we were talking earlier about learning what emotions you are feeling
Mm-hmm.
and identifying them. And so when you practice this somatic work, you're kind of acknowledging what emotions you're feeling, where it's stored in the body,
Mm-hmm.
giving yourself the space to feel it and release it.
Exactly.
And in the same time, you're actually learning how to identify that emotion in other
Mm-hmm.
people. So back to, how do you know you're empathic or intuitive or not, or that it's just your imagination? It's when you receive that particular type of information from somebody else, again, whether that's trauma, pain, or jealousy, anger, frustration, whatever, if you recognize it in yourself, it makes it easier to recognize it in others. And so when it comes up in others, and then you tag it by noticing or asking them how they're feeling, even. Most situations, it's going to be with people that you're around a lot of the time. So most of the time, people will simply accept that you are asking them how are they feeling. Hey, you feel frustrated. You seem like you're frustrated. Is that right? So now you're actually learning and taking steps to empower your empathic abilities, because now you're not just saying to yourself after the fact, oh, I knew it. I knew they were going to break up. I knew that this was going to happen. Well, you didn't say it. You just thought it and felt it. And so instead, you confirm on smaller steps. You confirm when, hey, you seem frustrated. Hey, you seem upset. Hey, you seem happy. You seem like you want something. You seem like you have a question for me. Notice how those different emotions feel in others. Say the question one. What does it feel like when you know that somebody's got a question for you? There is a code there. And if you can decode that and start picking up on it, again, that's a stepping stone towards in, amplifying your empathic abilities.
Now here's a tricky question, because I think all psychics and intuitives deal with this. So you ask somebody, and I think it happens to all of us, like we can feel something, like that person's struggling, or that person's mad at me, or that person is feeling anxious, and you ask them, and because they're uncomfortable, because a lot of times whenever we do feel insecure and somebody confronts us, we're going to deny it because it feels like a sense of failure. So when that person denies it, immediately your psychic senses are like, oh, you're wrong. It must be me, right? So what do you recommend, or what is your, I guess, feedback? I don't think there's a right or wrong.
I would say wait it out, right? So it you notice that there's something there. Wait a day or two and check back in with them. Maybe they denied it in the moment because they were amplified, they were amped up, and they didn't want to talk about it. Or they didn't want to talk about it for other reasons. There's a million and one reasons why somebody might take your accusation and not want to respond in, in a way that is confirming to you and your skills. So what I would say is maybe start off with more positive emotions or neutral emotions. So back to the feeling that somebody's coming up to you because they have a question. You can immediately say, hey, it seems like you got something on your mind you want to ask me. Nobody's going to feel negatively about that. They're going to just be, maybe they'll feel odd, right? Maybe they'll be like, no, that's odd. I don't know why you feel like that. Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't know. I just got that vibe from you. And they'll dismiss it just as easily as you can. And on the other hand would be to say, again, notice other things like hunger or happier things, like seems like you've had a really good day today. Is it, how's your day been? And I say, oh my God, my day's been amazing. So there is where you can confirm whether what you're picking up on is accurate data or if you're just way off.
Yeah, approaching the person with a positive intent, I think, is a great approach, because most people will respond positively to kindness and to friendliness. And so for me, that's something that has helped me tremendously. When I feel something about someone, I just approach them with a non-judgmental, very open to just engage with you kind of energy. And at some point they'll share, right? They'll tell you, or like you said, wait it out. If you feel something about someone, and this has been very true for me, I just kind of wait, and eventually it's like people's true intentions or true feelings eventually come out. That's another way that you can confirm your psychic or intuitive abilities, and it builds your confidence as well. So as you build your confidence, you become more secure in what's mine and what is not mine.
Yeah. And one point to remember in regards to developing these types of skills or abilities, and your confirmation or that you're right, your confirmation that no, you were way off, keep in mind that anything as far as your accuracy, anything over 50%,
Mhm.
especially with consistency, is a win.
Mhm.
That is a clear indicator that you are onto something.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of people feel ashamed to try or scared to try or to approach this stuff because they're afraid of failing, thinking that in order to be psychic, in order to be empathic, in order to be skilled in these arenas, that I should be 100% capable 100% of the time. And, what I would say to you is, when's the last time you walked into your bed or walked into a door frame or walked into a door, and yet you've been walking for 20, 30 some odd years of your life, 40 years of your life, and you still mess it up?
Yeah.
So you don't
Yeah.
even get walking 100% right. Why would we think that we would get psychic skills or empathic skills right 100% of the
Mhm.
time?
Mhm.
So you have to know that now you do want to make notes and compare, but nobody's perfect when you start. So that's something to always keep in mind.
Well, and also like what you said about it, the 50%, we know, and if you guys don't know, this is good to share, but like with psychic energy and timelines, things are always changing, which is why I find it very interesting. Like when people will approach me and be like, "Oh, you're psychic or you do tarot? Okay, tell me my future."
Mm-hmm.
And then you pick up something and then, oh, that didn't happen. Well, yeah, because we have to understand that we have multiple timelines occurring at the same time, and we can fall into different timelines, or we can quantum jump into different timelines based on our actions or thoughts, because we're always manifesting. And so you may not always be right, but that timeline could have shifted.
Yeah, that's certainly a possibility. And I would also shy away from letting that be an excuse.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning, your accuracy should be a bit better. You
Okay.
should be
Okay.
aiming for, because that's an easy out.
True.
That's a
Like a good
really, and that's
justification.
not what we want. We
Right.
want as clear data and real information, real confirmations
Mm-hmm.
as possible. And so you can kind of allow, and I'm not saying that's never the case, that it never happens,
Yeah.
that you're picking up on some different timeline with
Mm-hmm.
this person if they're asking you for a past or the future or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. But what I am saying is that we want to stay away from uh, the hype or the people not believing or
Yeah.
the fraud kind of tag as possible.
Yeah.
And so to me, that's my ears ring, my body like shifts when I hear that.
Yeah.
If the psychic tells me, oh, well, it's because this happened on a different timeline, I'm just like, bullshit.
And you also, yeah, and you do have to be careful to what you're saying. There are so many people out there that are just kind of abusing others for financial gain,
Right.
and that's what gives the whole psychic thing such a bad reputation. Which kind of leads me to what I was going to ask you next about, we see a lot of spiritual people who have gifts constantly paying psychics, constantly seeking knowledge from others. And what's your feedback on that?
Well, I don't think there's anything wrong inherently with that.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you're going to seek that out, uh, do it with a bit of caution, do it with a bit of skepticism. Actually, do it with a lot of skepticism.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the things that are given as readings by psychics or advice or whatever else have you. I mean, the truth is, a lot of that stuff is universal. A lot of the stuff with tarot or divine cards or whatever, it's designed to be applicable in a lot of arenas in life.
Like astrology.
Like astrology,
Yeah.
exactly. And so I would just say to keep a level head about it
Mm-hmm.
and utilize it for good. I while I say that, I would also say I've definitely seen tarot readers and would still see another tarot
Mm-hmm.
reader. I don't have. I would be. I'm very mindful about who I allow to read
Mm-hmm.
my tarot because if they're reading a future tarot, one thing to keep in mind is that you can begin manifesting what they read for you.
Yes, that's a good point.
And
Mhm.
so essentially your framework for your manifestation or the timeline that you're entering narrows, because now you have this person who, whether you fully believe them or not, you have essentially accepted that they are reading a tarot.
Right.
And even if you don't believe them, it's going to stick in your mind. So
Mhm.
if they say, "Oh, be careful of money in like the next month," or whatever message they might give you, it's going to stick in your mind, and then you're going to look for confirmation. And
Mhm.
we are designed as humans to be receptive to our confirmation bias.
Yep.
It goes exactly like you never saw this car before, and you love the car, and you buy the car because you want to be the only one that has this car, or one of the few that has it. Now all of a sudden you're seeing this car everywhere.
Mhm.
And so is it that the car wasn't there before, or is it that you have this confirmation and this eye and mind that is seeking to see this,
Right.
and either you're drawing it to you or it's just more noticeable.
Mhm.
So I would say that you should more often than not trust your own judgment, trust
Mhm.
your own gut feeling, and even reflect on who it is that you're seeing, and do a reading in your mind.
Mm.
Allow yourself the space to pretend that you're sitting down with a person that you really connect with. Maybe it's a teacher or guru or tarot reader, or uh, whatever it is. Even if it's other things, like it's an artist that you aspire or that you are very attracted to, or a musician that you're very attracted to, or any person that brings you some sort of inspiration. Have a powwow with them in your mind, and allow yourself the space to you let your imagination run wild, to
Mhm.
not judge what answer they're giving you. You start off the conversation very normal. How are you? How's it going? And allow it to unfurl as it will. And I bet you'll be really surprised with the data that you receive or with the answers that you're given. And allow yourself the flexibility to just appreciate that you got that message from that person, because more often than not you probably did tap into their energy, and you actually did receive data from them, how they might think about this situation, how they might have responded to
Mhm.
some particular question. And I would say there's just as much, if not more, validity to that experience than meeting with any psychic or tarot reader.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it goes back to what I was saying about having psychics or spiritual people that seek this knowledge not recognize that they have that innate power within them, and we can always tap into energy,
Mm-hmm.
somebody else's energy, and pick up on the data that they have, right? Especially through meditation. I think that that's another way. um Now, trying to discern from what are my thoughts and what is actually coming from that, I guess, that source, that psychic source, like the true data, the right data, and my opinions or my
Mm-hmm.
fears. Because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes when we're like doing that, if we want a certain answer, we're going to be biased, and we're
Oh
going to,
yeah.
oh, it's that, and it's really okay. Is that my fear? Is that what I want to hear, or is that real information?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's definitely a area that everybody struggles with,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't think there's an easy answer. I think that more often than not, go with your gut.
Yeah.
That might be the easy answer, and I'm not trying to cop out of fielding that question, really. But you know, yes, we are going to have bias towards our
Mm-hmm.
own future. So I would say it's going to be double, if not triple, as difficult to read your own future
Mm-hmm.
as it would be to read somebody you don't know, because,
Mm-hmm.
like you said, you have a confirmation bias about it. On the other hand, it would be to say that you should follow your heart.
So how does someone do that? How does someone listen to their gut or follow their heart?
Again, I think it's going to be about a bit of trial and error. I don't think I think everybody struggles with that,
Yeah.
and I think we have to learn how to, again, just like you do with the empathing confirmations with
Mm-hmm.
other people,
Yeah.
you're going to have to kind of just try it out for yourself, and you're going to have to feel things out and take active steps to record the process,
Mm-hmm.
meaning to journal,
Yeah.
meaning if you're feeling like you need to approach some question and you're seeking out an answer, and you notice my gut feels this, my heart feels this, write it out
Yeah.
and then proceed with the action after the fact. And if you're
Mm-hmm.
right, well, you know that that was a true feeling from your heart or gut.
Yeah.
You can use that as a tag or use that as a place to kind of return to if in the future you're going to do this again
Mm-hmm.
and recall that moment in time and how it felt to make that correct decision. And if you can recreate that same effect in the now, you're going to have a lot of success going forward with, distinguishing whether it is
Mm-hmm.
gut correct, heart correct, or simply correct.
And that always your confidence, right? Like every
Yes.
time that you're right. I have found that in my journey of trying to discern between my traumas and my fears and my biases and true psychic or empathic information, I noticed that the psychic or empathic or true information comes in a little slower. And my fears and my opinions come in really fast, very loud, very strong. The other thing that I will say is sometimes some of us are clairaudience, so we can hear, and it'll be like outside of ourselves, or it'll be clairaudience can also be inside. So sometimes we'll
Mm-hmm.
have very random thoughts. And I think everybody has experienced this where they're like thinking of someone and the phone rings and it's them, right? That is kind of an energetic psychic connection in itself. So it takes some time, like you said, trial and error, try to feel out what's what and what is true. So for me, and I like to use myself as an example because I like to be vulnerable and I like to be honest about my experiences. Um, Early on with my psychic journey, when my abilities were opening up, I met some friends for dinner and I said hi to my friend, and all of a sudden, like this thought crossed my mind of she's pregnant. And I was like, what the hell? I was like, okay, she didn't look different, nothing, she was literally having drinks like a few weeks prior. And at the end of the dinner, she's like, guess what, guys, I'm 6 weeks pregnant. And I was like, I just was like shook. I was like, how did I know that? And that thought, so what I did is I tagged it. How did that feel?
Mm-hmm.
How did that information come in? And it was very soft. It was very random. It was very gentle. And it wasn't based on how she looked. It wasn't based on, anything that she had done. So that is an example of like psychic data versus our opinions.
Yeah. And it's a really good example because there's a unique situation occurring. So it's not an everyday
Mm-hmm.
situation. So what I'll say about that is that her vibe, the data that she is outputting
Exactly.
in her field
Mm-hmm.
is carrying that information that she's
Exactly.
pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a very distinct uh, tag or vibration for that information.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to speak to you clairaudiently, emotionally,
Yeah.
empathically, whatever. That type of data is going to speak more loudly.
Mm-hmm.
Not only is it going to speak more loudly because she is pregnant and it's a more unique tag, it's also going to speak more loudly because inside she is waiting
Exactly.
to tell. She
Mm-hmm.
she has an energy of expression. She has an energy of, oh, I can't wait to tell them I'm pregnant. Oh my God, I'm
Mm-hmm.
pregnant. She's been thinking about it, mulling. So that's her whole vibe. Her whole vibe is pregnancy.
Mm-hmm.
So that is a very unique case that, again, is a clear indicator of you picking up on true data.
Yeah. Yeah. And what you said about her holding that information in her field, that is how psychic energy works. Everybody thinks that psychic stuff is like very like magical, but really we all have that capability. It's just how sensitive are you to picking up the information? And at that time I was ridiculously sensitive because I was going through my spiritual awakening and I was just like picking up on all kinds of things, which can be overwhelming. But yeah, whatever the person is carrying in their aura, and whatever the person is thinking about constantly, if you're sensitive enough, you're going to pick up on it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just really discerning on what is my stuff and what is reality.
Yeah. And, just to reemphasize the point about empathic or intuitive, It is that everybody has this capability.
Mm-hmm.
That this is not something that you have to be special in order to
Exactly.
have data or have experiences or whatever else. This is something that is a learned skill. Everybody has had an experience of being around somebody they didn't like, and there was no reason, there was nothing that occurred between them that made it to where they didn't like them. They just didn't like being around them. Everybody's, I've literally heard every single person at some point in their life, whether they believe in this stuff or not, say that person had bad vibes, that place had bad vibes, this had bad vibes. I didn't feel like I had, and so that all this other data is again simply taking the time to reflect on information that you're getting throughout your day and being more aware.
Mm-hmm.
Those things are so much louder because there is an element of danger, which again it ignites our primal sense of protection, which is where this type of empathic sensory comes from. Empathing comes from primitive man.
Mm.
It comes from our necessity to identify what is happening around us with the people
The
around us, with
threats.
the animals around us, and needing to know on a very clear basis without having these sharp claws to defend
Yeah.
ourselves or big teeth or whatever else have you. We had to use our mind. So the more that our mind developed, our hearts also developed in this way to pick up this type of data.
Yeah. Yeah. And with that, to flip it a little bit to make it interesting, it's like, how would somebody know if they don't like someone because that person genuinely has bad intentions and bad energy, or if it's their own shit, like their own insecurities? And I say this because a lot of people who have worked on themselves or have a meditation practice and they've raised their frequency, because we have an electromagnetic field around us, they'll make other people who have a lower frequency uncomfortable. So a lot of times they'll meet someone and be like, I just don't like that person. Yeah. And there have been times that it's because their insecurities and their shadows are being picked up by that person because, they can't help it. So yeah. What would you say about that?
Well, what I would say about that is that everything and everyone around you is a mirror. And so it's important to take stock on, why is this person in your immediate vicinity?
Mm-hmm.
Why are they triggering you to have this reaction, especially if there's no outward cause? So, what is coming up in you and this person? It could be a million different variables. It could be that this person looks like your ex. Mm-hmm. It could be that this person has bad vibes and for no apparent reason. It could be that that person's antisocial. Mm-hmm. It could be that they're out to steal from you. There's so many different elements within it that if there's no outward clear reason why you don't like this person, or it's important to always look at why they are rubbing you the wrong way. Yeah. What is it within you that is being reflected by this individual? Now, that's not to say that you have to continue to stay around this person or invite them into your life or whatever. It is still true that you should listen to your gut feeling and your intuitions, especially if there's a negative element within there. But regardless of that, you can do this on your own. You can do this in the moment, but it's still something that is helpful to reflect on as to what is being reflected back to you in your immediate surroundings.
Yeah, to that point, my therapist always says, the people that annoy us the most, or like just they haven't done anything but they just get under our skin, are literally our best teachers and our mirrors, because they have something in them that we have in ourselves. So it's like the shadow work aspect, right? Like Carl Jung's work always talks about, if somebody annoys you and they haven't done anything. Because if you think about it, you can have a coworker or you can have a friend that annoys you because of, I don't know, the way that they live their life. Oh, like that person's always texting. But there are other people texting, or there are other people that do the same thing. Why don't the other people annoy you, right? It's because that person has something in their field that reminds you of you. And I like that example because if there's somebody that annoys you, let's just say somebody breaks the rules Ugh, they're always breaking the rules. Why do they annoy me? Could it be that you feel like you can't break the rules? Could it be that you're a perfectionist? Could that be your shadow, that you don't allow yourself wiggle room to not be a perfectionist, to speak up about your needs, to ask for that deadline, to say this is too much work, right? So it's always a reflection of something within you that needs healing, especially if that person's not really doing anything to
Mm-hmm.
you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's always good to come back to the self
Yeah.
and take responsibility for your role in whatever engagement, interaction, or occurrence that happens. And again, it's difficult to say that we are the issue or that we are the reason for this occurring, but look at what elements caused you to be in the situation that you're in,
Yeah.
and instead of looking outward for the
Mm-hmm.
blame.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And like going back to the empathic thing or the empath thing, I think one of the biggest misconceptions with empaths that I see is that we're quick to say we're an empath because it's convenient,
Mm-hmm.
because it justifies, it puts the blame on others, and it justifies being the way that you are. But unfortunately, a lot of the empath symptoms are identical to trauma symptoms, to CPTSD symptoms, hypervigilance. So you're hypervigilant and you have been groomed to notice people's body language, to notice people's words, to pick up on anything that they may say or do that leads to them abandoning you, rejecting you, criticizing you. That comes from childhood. CPTSD is essentially the manifestation of recurring traumatic events. So you learn, if that happened to you as a child, you learn nobody's safe. I have to be hyper vigilant. And then you grow up and you hear about this empath thing and you're like, oh, I know things about people because I'm empathic. Okay, perhaps. Or are you just hyper vigilant because it's coming from a place of lacking safety?
Yeah, that's a really good point, and I think that one big takeaway from that for me is to always keep your skeptic's hat on and always look for what can be identified in this reality.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning, like you said, instead of thinking it's empathic, look at the
CPTSD.
CPTSD.
Mm-hmm.
Look at elements of psychology. Look at elements of therapy. Look at
Yeah.
all these different modalities or different things that you can maybe more accurately point to as being rooted in this world before saying it's something psychic or something spiritual. And again, I would say it's nothing bad to think that the spiritual or psychic side or answer uh, is one of your explanations, but
Mm.
make the other two something rooted in this world. So, okay, one's I'm empathic or psychic. Well, two is maybe I have some unresolved trauma. Three is
Mm-hmm.
maybe I have PTSD. And really do your own due diligence before simply accepting that it is a psychic phenomenon that's occurring.
Yeah, because that's just another route to spiritual bypassing instead of working on your stuff. And really, doing that work that you mentioned of like taking inventory of what is perhaps trauma or like a habit that's stemming from something that happened to me versus real psychic knowledge. When you do the work of healing and you do the work of maybe working with a therapist and, oh, like this is why I'm like this, you start to rule out certain things. And what is left is probably your empathic abilities.
Hmm.
Because when you're a healed empath, when you're a balanced empath, you're not consumed by the world. You no longer allow uh, the world to drain you to the point of isolation. You don't allow the world to drain you to the point where you're people pleasing because you learn boundaries in therapy,
Hmm.
because you learn what my needs are in therapy. You get to know yourself. So you start ruling out some of those traits that are not empath traits. They're toxic traits that you've learned to survive and to be safe.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's a good capper
Yeah.
into this segment.
Yeah. So one last thing. Do you have any tips? And I'll kind of talk about this a little bit about what I said to piggyback off of existing in the world, existing in the matrix, being a sensitive person, highly sensitive people. That is a term that's very real where biological system is wired differently. So we're ultra sensitive to stimulus, right? how can somebody like that come out into the world and function? Because I know a lot of HSPs that are ridden with anxiety,
Mm-hmm.
so they isolate, and so they react, and they're snappy, and they're exhausted all the time, and they're burnt out.
Well, I think I would relate it back to the very last thing that you said, which is look at why. What have you done to work on yourself?
Exactly.
Okay, you're calling yourself an HSP, you're calling yourself an
Mm-hmm.
empath. That might be true.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're feeling all this anxiety, all this worry, all this stress, all this whatever from your environment, um, it is probably a good suggestion to seek out therapy, seek out some sort of counseling to determine if there are some underlying trauma issues or unresolved things within you that are actually causing these reactions to occur. And I bet what you'll find is that when you actually dig with a counselor that helps you or a therapist, that you uncover these different things that are occurring within you, you'll probably find a lot more bandwidth for the other things in life that you are looking to not be, triggered by or not be turned off by or not avoid anymore. Yeah. Doesn't mean that you're not going to avoid maybe large social gatherings, but maybe, you go out with your friends more. Maybe you're not so impacted by going to the grocery store, going to the store, or doing. Or
you pick better things. Friends, right? Like you pick.
Or you pick better friends. And again, I would say that's an element that a counselor or therapist would be more capable to look at your unique situation and give you ideas as to why that is occurring. What is the root behind, you being triggered by all these things? And after you go through all of that, then you still have your sensory, and you then can learn how to not feel bombarded by sensory. Yeah. Because you've done all the internal work. I say all. You're never done with the work, but you've done enough work that you can go out into the world and you can have experiences with this energy that's all around you, but at the same time you're able to remain stable. Even taking it back to the very beginning of the conversation, which is coming into your lower chakra, thinking about your lower chakra, bringing your mind and your focus down there. Even if you have to touch it or hold it or whatever, if you're in a social situation, that is your first defense. That is your first ways and means to psychically, spiritually help block out your highly sensitive perceptions that are occurring. So that'll make it 10, 15, 20% better. And on top of the 10, 15, 20% better that you got from therapy, you're probably doing a lot better than you were.
And now you're empowered.
And now you're empowered. And ultimately, it's not about turning off that sensory altogether. It's about, you still want the sensory. Yeah. You just don't want to feel overwhelmed and drained by it. So if you can manage these other things and learn how to manage your energy through something like this, or cord cutting, or pyramid building, or other techniques to help clear out and block your energy, you will find that, again, you can engage with the world better, that you can engage with these different things, and I think you'll find a lot more stability and peace and clarity when you are picking up data. You'll be more clear because you're not feeling overwhelmed by it. You're able to receive it and to decode it a little bit.
Yeah, and the irony that sensitives, the people who are very sensitive, are actually here to be, most of them are here to be leaders, are here to be healers, are here to be creatives. But if we are just hiding from the world, we can't do it. We can't fulfill our missions. So for the viewers that I have on Leo Rising Integration, Alex, where can they find your page? So talk a little bit about what you do and
yeah. So my page is at Authentic Awakenings. Just exactly how it sounds is how it's spelled. That's my Instagram. I'm also on YouTube. It's the same handle, Authentic Awakenings, at the back end of the YouTube URL, or you can look it up on YouTube as well. Yeah, that's I do a little bit of coaching, psychic coaching, spiritual coaching, personal development coaching, and we really help psychics notice their abilities, notice their capabilities, and give them tools to amplify those abilities. And a lot of people that are spiritual, they know that they're spiritual, they know that they've had some feelings or some ideas of things that they've encountered. And so, what I'm aimed to do is help you pinpoint that and give you the tools, techniques, practices to amplify it. So, yeah,
Yeah.
that's me.
Yeah. And that in the meditation piece too.
Yeah, and
That helps.
meditations and all kinds of stuff.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah,
This was
thank you.
fun.